In 1843, the sugar fields of Cuba ran red with blood. Enslaved Africans, beaten beyond endurance, turned their machetes not on the cane, but on the men who had chained them. For a brief and terrifying moment, the planters' empire trembled. Cuba, in the mid-19th century, was the beating heart of the world's sugar trade. Its plantations fed Europe's sweet tooth and made Spain's colonial elite fabulously rich. But behind the glittering mansions of Havana and the profits shipped across the Atlantic lay a human catastrophe. 500,000 enslaved Africans labored in Cuba's cane fields. They worked 16-hour days under the brutal Caribbean sun. The whips of overseers tore open flesh. Iron collars cut into necks. Families were broken apart, children sold away, wives violated, husbands chained. Life expectancy was short, death common, and cruelty endless. Among Cuba's people of color was Gabriel de la Concepcion Valdez, known to history as Plácido. Born free, the mixed-race son of a Spanish father and an Afro-Cuban mother, Plácido rose to prominence as a poet. His verses spoke of beauty, sorrow, and hope, but behind the elegance of his words burned a deeper fire. For Afro-Cubans, enslaved and free, Plácido became a symbol of resilience, of possibility, of quiet rebellion. Planters and colonial officials dismissed enslaved voices as powerless, unable to imagine that those they whipped and chained could ever rise against them. But they were wrong. The suffering of Cuba's enslaved deepened in the 1840s. Ship after ship brought new captives from Africa, many seasoned warriors who carried fresh memories of resistance. They knew what it meant to fight for freedom. Their presence breathed new life into whispers of revolt. In the cane fields of Matanzas, rumors spread like wildfire. The machete, tool of bondage, could become a weapon of liberation. At night, secret gatherings took place. In songs, in prayers, in coded language, the enslaved spoke of uprising. They spoke of torches, of vengeance, of burning away the empire's wealth. The conspiracy took form. Across plantations in Matanzas and Havana, enslaved men and women plotted to rise together. They would torch the sugar mills, slaughter the overseers, and put an end to the planters who lived off their blood. Hope, fragile and dangerous, began to eclipse fear. And then came 1843. The spark ignited. Violence erupted. On plantations across Matanzas province, enslaved workers turned on their masters. Cane fields blazed with fire. Sugar mills, once symbols of planter power, were engulfed in smoke. Masters and overseers who had wielded the whip with impunity now faced the sharpened edge of machetes. Screams pierced the night as planters fell, their empire shaken in a matter of hours. The white elite of Cuba panicked. Their richest colony, the pride of Spain's empire, seemed on the brink of collapse. The memory of Haiti's revolution haunted them. They feared that what had happened in Saint-Domingue, that enslaved people might overthrow slavery itself, was coming to Cuba. For the enslaved, it was a moment of power, fleeting but real. The fires were not just destruction. They were symbols of defiance, proof that those in chains could strike back. But Spain responded with fury. Colonial authorities launched a campaign of repression unmatched in its brutality. Troops flooded Matanzas. Thousands of men and women were seized. Torture became the tool of truth. And it was here that the conspiracy earned its infamous name, La Escalera, the ladder. Prisoners were tied to wooden ladders, their bodies stretched and exposed. They were whipped until their skins split, until blood pooled beneath them. Torches seared their flesh. Some were burned alive. Many confessed under agony to plots they never knew, naming others simply to end their pain. Others died in silence, their bodies discarded as warnings. The terror spread far beyond Matanzas. Anyone suspected of sympathy, anyone of African descent who spoke too boldly, became a target. Free men of color, artisans, preachers, poets, all fell under suspicion. The repression became not just a punishment of rebellion, but a purge of black resistance. Among those swept into the storm was Plácido. His poetry had long carried the spirit of dignity and quiet defiance. To the colonial elite, that was enough. He was arrested, accused of complicity in the conspiracy. There was no fair trial, no proof. But the Spanish needed scapegoats. Plácido, the poet of the people, became one of them. In 1844, he was executed by firing squad. Witnesses said he faced death with calm, reciting a final prayer, refusing to show fear. His body fell, but his words endured. By the time the repression ended, more than 3,000 people of African descent were dead. Some had indeed taken part in the uprising. Many others were entirely innocent, caught in the colonial net of fear. The cane fields of Cuba had been drenched in blood, not just of planters but of thousands who dreamed of freedom. The planters regained their power, but at a cost. The conspiracy of La Escalera exposed a truth they could never bury. The enslaved would never quietly accept their chains. No matter the whips, no matter the torture, resistance lived on. The memory of 1843, 1844 haunted Cuba for decades. For the white elite, it was a reminder of their fragility, a nightmare they tried to erase. For Afro-Cubans, it was both tragedy and inspiration, a testament that their ancestors had fought, had burned, had dared to strike at the empire itself. Plácido's poetry, silenced by bullets, lived on in secret. His words carried whispers of dignity, of defiance, of the unbreakable human spirit. He became a martyr, his name etched into the hidden history of Cuba's struggle. The conspiracy of La Escalera remains one of the darkest chapters in the Caribbean. It was an uprising born of desperation, crushed by terror. But it revealed the unshakable truth that slavery could never erase, that within the human heart, the desire for freedom burns hotter than any fire set to cane. This was the story of Cuba's La Escalera conspiracy, where dreams of freedom turned fields into battlefields and poetry into rebellion. The planters crushed the uprising, but they could not crush the memory of resistance. It lingers, haunting Cuba's history. If you want to hear more hidden slave stories that history tried to silence, watch this playlist here and subscribe for more haunting history. Some rebellions end in ashes, but the memory of resistance never dies.